Hello and welcome. I'm Thomas Porteous and you're watching NewsX World. Let's take a look at some of the top stories. An Israeli strike destroys a 15-story high-rise in Gaza City. The second tower hit in 2 days, with the military saying Hamas used the building for operations. Defense Minister Israel Katz vows to continue as footage shows the Sussi Tower collapsing into rubble. US President Donald Trump says India and the United States share a special relationship despite tensions over tariffs and Russian oil purchases. Trump insists there is nothing to worry about, calling such disputes only moments on occasion. President Donald Trump warns Venezuelan jets will be shot down if they threaten US naval ships after Caracas flew warplanes near American vessels for the second time in 2 days. The warning comes after a US strike killed 11 on a Venezuelan boat accused of drug trafficking. UK Prime Minister Keir Starmer shakes up his cabinet after Angela Rayner resigns over a tax scandal. He names David Lammy as Deputy Prime Minister and Yvette Cooper as Foreign Secretary and Shabana Mahmood as Home Secretary. Starmer is expected to announce more changes to the lower ranks in the coming days. Lebanon's cabinet approves an army plan to establish a state monopoly on arms and begin disarming the group Hezbollah, though no timeline is set and capabilities are limited. Hezbollah official Mahmoud Kamati calls the move an opportunity to return to wisdom and avoid slipping into the unknown. A new report from Canada's Finance Department formally acknowledges that Khalistani extremist groups are operating in the country with financial support. The report classifies them as terrorist organisations that promote violence to pursue political goals and self-determination. The mother of Israeli hostage Matan Angrest has told that her son's life was in immediate danger, marking the 700th night in captivity. In a post addressed to Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu, Anat Angrest vows to protest outside his residence until action is taken. Thailand's new Prime Minister-elect, Enutin Charnavarakul, names his first cabinet picks, including a former Treasury chief, a top energy executive and a senior diplomat. He says the team will bring confidence amid political turmoil as he promises a referendum and election within 4 months. We start in the Middle East, where Gaza's government media office has strongly rejected Israel's claims that recent strikes on high-rise residential towers targeted Hamas military operations. In a statement, the office called these allegations lies and propaganda used to justify what it described as barbaric aggression. They affirmed that, according to residents' testimonies, these towers were under constant surveillance and exclusively occupied by civilians. The statement further accused Israel of using these claims as part of a deliberate strategy to justify attacks on civilian areas and infrastructure. They also condemned the strikes as forced displacement, highlighting that such actions violate international law. The situation remains tense as both sides continue to present conflicting narratives. We are now joined by Xavier Abu Eid. He's a political analyst and he joins us live from Ramallah. Xavier, thank you very much for joining us here on the programme. What more can you tell us about this, Xavier? This is obviously the second tower block that has been destroyed by Israel, compelling visuals coming out of the enclave. Both sides, of course, claiming different things. Israel says that this was used as terror infrastructure where Hamas operated out of. The other side says that it was not, it was used by civilians. What are your thoughts on where the narrative truly lies, Xavier?
Thank you, Thomas. I think here there are not two sides of the story. There is clearly one side that is committing a genocide according to the top legal scholars worldwide, in accordance to the consensus in all human rights organizations. And Israel has been constantly targeting civilian infrastructure in Gaza. Almost 90% of the infrastructure in Gaza has been destroyed. No one could claim that 90% of Gaza's infrastructure was Hamas. But also, Thomas, I think it's very important for your viewers to understand that Israel has been constantly lying. And this is something that has been coming out as mere propaganda. And I think the best example of those lies is with the killing of a group of journalists and humanitarian workers at the Nasser hospital a couple of weeks ago, when they claimed that there were some Hamas people in the hospital. And yesterday, even the Associated Press ended up claiming, actually confirming, that it was a camera of Reuters. So basically, they were targeting journalists, and they said it was Hamas.
Xavier, of course, Israel would say that Hamas runs Gaza's government media office, and that their response cannot be trusted. How do you respond to this?
Thomas, could anyone trust Israel? I mean, here we are not talking about whatever Hamas says or doesn't say. Here we're talking about what all witnesses are saying. And I think, Thomas, it's very important for all international media to keep reminding that you are not on the ground because Israel is not allowing international media to get into Gaza. And the few Palestinian journalists that are reporting all of this are being killed by Israel. So whatever Israel says, first of all, many of what they are saying are lies, and it has been proven as lies. I don't know if you remember when in 2023, Israel attacked Al-Ahli hospital, the only Christian hospital in Gaza, and they claimed it was Islamic Jihad, and they said that they would never target a hospital. Well, they have been targeting every single hospital in Gaza, not just hospitals. You're talking about schools, you're talking about universities. So this is not, Thomas, about what each side says. There is something very clear, which is what the United Nations have been saying, what human rights organizations have been saying, and what every single organization with access on the ground have been saying, which is that Israel is committing a plan, which we don't have to analyze too much, since Israeli leaders have been very clear that their goal is to ethnically cleanse Gaza City. They want to move 1 million people out of Gaza City in order to, they claim for security reasons, I believe it's more an attempt of annexation, if not Gaza City, at least areas around Gaza City.
Xavier, do stay with us as we have further updates from the conflict. The United Nations Secretary General Antonio Guterres has called for an immediate ceasefire in Gaza, stressing the urgent need for humanitarian access to alleviate the suffering of civilians. Speaking at the Shanghai Cooperation Organization Summit, Guterres highlighted the worsening humanitarian crisis and the necessity for hostages to be released unconditionally. He also reaffirmed the two-state solution as the only path to peace. Let's have a look at his statements.
There is an offensive in Gaza City that will have, again, the tremendous impact, making hundreds of thousands of people being forced to move once again, and with an unimaginable level of suffering. So we must stop this. So first, an immediate permanent ceasefire. On the other hand, it is totally unacceptable to have hostages, and those hostages have been treated in a very horrible way. So hostages must be also released immediately and unconditionally. And then there must be complete free access for humanitarian organizations to distribute basic humanitarian items to the population in Gaza that needs food, that needs water, that needs medicine, that needs sanitation, that is in an absolutely dramatic situation, and famine was the result of that. So obstacles must end, any problems that are put to humanitarian action must stop, and humanitarian access must be guaranteed everywhere. Not forgetting that as occupying power, Israel has the objective to guarantee that the population in Gaza has food, has health care, because this is part of international law. It's not only Gaza, it's also the situation in the West Bank, where we see now decision to build the extension of settlements that would divide the West Bank into two, separating north and south, which of course would be another tremendous setback in the way to a two-state solution that, in my opinion, remains the only possible solution for two peoples to live in peace.
We're once again joined by Xavier Abu Eid to discuss this further. Xavier, the UN has been a crucial vocal point of the people of Gaza, especially for the likes of UNRWA, who are vilified on quite a frequent basis by Israel and its spokespeople. What can you tell us briefly, because we don't have much time, and there's another point I want to tackle, about the capabilities of the UN in this conflict and its action during this nearly 2-year war now?
Because I think the United Nations has more than one layer to work here. The political level is blocked, and it's blocked because the UN system allows for powers in the Security Council to have a veto over some decisions, and the US is fully on the Israeli side on this, so it's somehow paralyzed on its goal to have to ensure world peace and security. But when it comes to humanitarian work, the UN has had a very important role for the past 78 years here in Palestine, and this is precisely what Israel has been targeting now, even leading to the killing of hundreds of humanitarian workers in Gaza.
And another point, Xavier, of course, Antonio Guterres mentioned the two-state solution, which is at the forefront of a lot of governments' foreign policy when it comes to this conflict. He mentioned the new settlement plan that's being built. The plans have been announced for that region. You join us from Ramallah, Xavier. Is there still hope for a an established Palestinian state where you are?
Let us say, Thomas, just for clarification for your viewers, that the two-state solution is an international position, international formula, and the international consensus. And the two-state solution means ending the Israeli occupation that began in 1967, allowing for a Palestinian state on 22% of historic Palestine, which is the West Bank, including East Jerusalem and Gaza. Israel opposes this solution, but they also oppose the other solution that some people talk about, which is one single democratic state with equal rights for everyone. So in other words, Israel is very clear about what they want, and they continue on the ground to implement those policies, which is apartheid. In other words, one state and two different systems. And even in the case of Gaza, what we have now is genocide. So eventually, even though Palestinian Christian and Muslims are more in number than Israeli Jews in all of historic Palestine or Israel-Palestine, what Israel is implementing is a situation whereby the Palestinian people will never exercise its inalienable right to self-determination.
Xavier Abu Eid, thank you very much for joining us on the programme. Pleasure to talk to you. We now move over to North America for our next story, where US President Donald Trump is standing by Robert F. Kennedy Jr. as US Health Secretary despite growing criticism and political risks. Kennedy, who has long been a critic of vaccines, is making sweeping changes to the nation's healthcare system. He's cutting vaccine research funding, redistricting access to COVID-19 shots, and ousting the CDC director. These actions have raised alarms about public health and political repercussions. Still, President Donald Trump defends Kennedy, calling him a very good person with different ideas. Kennedy's policies mark a significant shift in US healthcare, but Trump remains confident in his judgment. We are now joined by Keith Vaz. He is a former UK minister and he joins us live from London. Keith, lovely to see you as always. What are your thoughts about Robert F. Kennedy's approach to his running of the health services in the United States? A vaccine skeptic, some would say a conspiracy theorist. Donald Trump backs him all the way, Keith. What are your thoughts?
Good afternoon, Thomas. Always lovely to talk to you as well. This should come as no surprise because when he was appointed, a deal was done. He was running for president. It was the middle of the presidential race when Kennedy agreed to drop out of the race, and Trump agreed that he would appoint him as the health secretary. So Trump is very well aware, President Trump is very well aware of what Robert Kennedy Jr. stands for. It is a complete opposite to the current administration of the health service in the United States. And therefore, the appointment of Kennedy was designed to shake things up. So there is absolutely no way that Donald Trump is going to dissociate himself away from Kennedy, because this has always been Robert F. Kennedy's stance, that he believes the COVID vaccine was wrong. He believes that there is a health establishment that is causing a lot of difficulties to the American people. So it's difficult to suddenly move him. Of course, he has to give him 100% backing. And of course, people are very upset because that is who he is. He's a very controversial figure in health policy in America and throughout the world. So we're going to have to wait to see what happens in the end after the processes. The most powerful group in America are the doctors themselves. So let's see whether Robert Kennedy is prepared to, if you like, put his knife to any cuts in the cost of the medical health insurance sector and the cost of pharmaceuticals, which are massive. I know, as someone who runs a diabetes charity in the UK, that we are very keen to deal with the research and benefit from the research that has been given from the Americans. In particular, there's a diabetes piece of equipment called the Freestyle Libre, which is made in Chicago. It's made the Americans $4 billion over the last 5 or 6 years because it's free on the NHS in the UK. It's not free in the USA, and it's not free in other parts of the world. It's not free in India, for example. So let's see whether he's prepared to do something about that. But the fact that he's controversial, doing some very controversial things, Donald Trump must love it.
Keith, I apologise for the broad question here, but why has medicine and science become so political, of course, around the world, but especially in the United States?
Because it's a money-making exercise. The biggest and highest paid professionals in America are not newsreaders such as yourself or ex-politicians such as myself, but the doctors and the consultants and the dentists and the anesthetists and the radiologists, they're right at the top. There's massive amounts of money made in the health sector. People have to pay masses in terms of insurance. If you go to a hospital and you don't have insurance, you will not be treated. There have been massive cuts to Medicare. So this is a huge sector in America. I think probably ranking just below the arms trade as the biggest sector. So of course it's going to be controversial, and of course there are going to be lots and lots of vested interests. So that's why there is such interest in it. It's not a broad question. It's a very important question. Why is this such a critical portfolio? Because there's so much money at stake. Actually, the one thing that really Trump will go down in history as a great president is if he reduces the cost of medicines to the ordinary American people. It would make a huge difference to them if that could happen.
Keith Vaz, always a pleasure to talk to you. Thank you very much for joining us and taking the time. We now move over to Europe for our next story, where Slovak Prime Minister Robert Fico has remarked that Ukraine's accession to the European Union would be a lengthy process. This statement has come after Fico's meeting with Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky in Uzhhorod. He further said that Ukraine do meet all necessary criteria for leadership, but he also advised the Ukrainian president that larger EU member states may pose substantial obstacles to Ukraine's accession to the body, as Ukraine's membership will force changes in agricultural policies and financial distribution within the Union. The Slovak Prime Minister reiterated his position on Ukrainian security guarantees, where he said that Slovakia, being a small country, cannot play a decisive role, but it supports any measures taken for peace. We're now joined by Major General G.G. Davidi. He's a global strategic expert and he joins us live from New Delhi. Thank you very much, Major General Davidi, for joining us here and speaking to us. Obviously, the Ukraine's road to the European Union while it's still in conflict, seems very long. What more can you tell us about this situation? I believe we are having some technical issues. I apologise. Major General, can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you.
Okay. What more can you tell us about this situation? Of course, the Ukraine would love to be in the European Union. It has been very vocal about that. Why would this be such a huge move for Kiev and its people?
Well, first and foremost, I think Ukraine is very keen to join the European Union because of number of reasons. First and foremost, it gives a certain degree of security to Ukraine because right now it is facing aggression from Russia, and once they are part of the European Union, then willy-nilly they get a security, and which is very, very critical for Ukraine. The second point is also integration into the European Union economically, because that means that they become part of a system, and that also gives them the economic security, and more than that, they get integrated into a European system. But at the same time, as Slovakian Prime Minister has stated, that there is a procedure to join the European Union, because today it has 27 members and they have to meet a certain criteria. And then there is a procedure, there are almost 35 policy areas which needs to be met by the applicant country. And there is a European Commission which sits on it, and they decide each policy case one at a time. And of course, there is certain amount of skepticism among the European Union states, because after all, Ukraine is not a small country. It's a country which is almost 700,000 square kilometers, and there's a population of about 40 million plus. And it has also its own economy. And more than that, it is a major agriculture country, because it's almost like the wheat bowl of the world. And so it will also means once Ukraine joins the European Union, there will be certain amount of disruption in the system that is currently there, and especially in terms of the economy, because there are very many small countries which will actually face certain amount of turbulence once a big country like European Union, in the European Union, Ukraine joins it. So these are some of the concerns of the European members. So all I can say is, first and foremost, it's very important and critical for Ukraine to join European Union, because it gives them a degree of security. But at the same time, the procedures are long and lengthy, so they'll have to go through very patiently. And thirdly, the current members of European Union, they will also will be slightly concerned and skeptical when a big country joins the organization, because that will mean certain degree of disruption and certain degree of accommodation. Thomas.
Yes, thank you very much, Major General Gigi Davidi, for joining us here on the programme and for taking the time. We stay in Europe for our next story, where forest firefighters in Leon in northern Spain are protesting to demand better working conditions and enhanced training. Their call comes after devastating wildfires in August that destroyed over 300,000 hectares of land and tragically cost lives. The firefighters say improved support is crucial to prevent future disasters and to protect both their safety and their families and the environment. Let's take a listen in to what some of them had to say.
Lo que venimos a reivindicar es nuestras pésimas condiciones laborales, porque seguimos con unas condiciones laborales tercermundistas. Nosotros lo que reivindicamos es, pues primero, que nos reconozcan la categoría de bomberos forestales, que la sociedad ya lo hace, ya nos conoce como bomberos forestales, pero parece ser que la Junta no lo asume, no quiere darnos esa categoría. Por otro lado, lo que estamos buscando es que esté todo el operativo 100% del año, que estemos todos trabajando todo el año para evitar estos desastres que han ocurrido. Pero claro, aquí lo triste es que se han perdido vidas, se han perdido el patrimonio de gente, bienes, se han perdido explotaciones, se han perdido ganaderías, se ha perdido patrimonio natural. Es un desastre en todos los aspectos.
Son políticas de hace 40 años.
Para meterte después en un incendio de 20.000 hectáreas como los que ha habido y enfrentarse a las llamas, creo que es bastante insuficiente. Formación tenemos cero, pero vamos, cero. Entonces...
Well, that is all that we have time for, but we will continue to bring you more news updates from around the world. Thank you.